Welcome back, everyone, to another segment of Rabbi Jeff's Pirkei Avos, where we attempt to understand the meaning behind the instructions of our sages and how it's relevant to our lives today. We do this, of course, using the thoughts of our teachers before us and try to make them applicable to our times. Feel free, please, to contact me with any comments or questions at rjfromlj@aol.com. Okay, I'm recording.
Say which Mishna also.
I put it up on the chat. Yes, I put it up on the chat, and I'm now going to put it up again. Make sure everybody got it. Okay. The Mishnah is chapter 2, Mishnah 7. For those of you that got it twice, I apologize, but it's the same Mishnah. Huay Omer, so continuing on with Hillel's statements. Marbe basar, marbe rima. That the more flesh you have, the better lunch you will be for the worms. That's what it says. The better marbe rima. There will be more worms eating your body when you die. How inspiring and beautiful that is. Marbe nechasim, the more stuff you have, marbe daga, the more worry you have. My father, Olav Shalom, I remember he never in his life had a new car. I remember one time he got a new car. It was a Ford Maverick, and it had a black top. It was like a big hush of a thing in those days. I have no idea how he was able to afford a car, but he got himself a new car. And he came home with the car, and everybody was so excited. Oh, amazing! We run into the car, and it was just in the days where power windows were starting to come in, and it's roll down windows. I looked at him and said, like, what's with the roll down windows? What is this? This old fashioned. Why don't you get the power windows? And he explained to us, marbe nechasim, marbe daiga. The more shtick you got, the more stuff you got, the more you got to worry about it. The more toys you have, the more it breaks. Okay? Beautiful. That's the message of the Mishnah. Marbe noshim, the more wives you have, which is not really practical halacha because you can only have one of them. But marbe noshim, the more women you have, marbe kshafim, the more witchcraft you have in your house. Don't leave yet. We'll explain that. But what is the Mishnah teaching me? Marbe shvaches, you have a lot of house help, a lot of maidservants. Marbe zima, so then there is going to be an increase in immorality. Marbe avodim, if you have a lot of avodim, a lot of slaves, sit in marbe gezel. There's going to be a lot of thievery going on in your house. Marbe Torah, if you have a lot of Torah, marbe chayim, then you're going to have a lot of life. That's a frum thing. You learn more Torah, life is going to be better. Yeah, I've heard that somewhere before. What does it mean? Marbe Torah, marbe chayim. Marbe yeshiva, which does not mean necessarily the institution, but marbe yeshiva, the more you sit, then marbe chochma, then the wiser you're going to become. Marbe eitzah, the more counsel you seek and give. Marbe tvuna, the more understanding and wisdom you have. Marbe tzedakah, the more charity. Marbe shalom, then the more peace you have. Kana shem tov, and if you acquire a good name, kana la'atzmo, you've acquired it for yourself. Kana lo divrei Torah, and if you have acquired divrei Torah, kana lo chaye olam haba, you have acquired life in the world to come. So you'll think to yourself that, okay, that's pretty obvious. These good things, these bad things. The more good things you have, the better it is. The more bad things you have, the worse it is. We understand, we've been learning Pirkei Avos long enough to know that can't be what the Mishnah is trying to tell me. What's the message of this Mishnah? We need to uncover, what does the word marbe mean? Now, I know you've all, you're all Hebrew speakers. Everybody knows what the word marbe is, harbe, marbe, to increase, but I'm asking it in different terms. What is the acceptable amount of basar that anything over that is called marbe, is called too much. Is it 1 steak and 2 steaks is called marbe? Is it 5 pounds overweight, 10 pounds is called marbe? What's marbe? In every one of these things, what's marbe? That marbe nechasim, the more you have, the more you have to worry. But what's the acceptable level that the next thing is called, oh, that's marbe nechasim, that's too much. Marbe shvachos, oh no, that's too much. At what point is it marbe? Torah. You have an obligation, you have to be involved in Torah all the time. So then what's marbe? Torah is something that's considered ein lo shir, it has no size requirement. So then what's marbe? What's too much Torah? Where do we put the word marbe into each one of these things? Is there any kind of seder, any kind of order to this Mishnah? That it says these things and then 5 things and then another 5 things? Is there some sub-message that the Mishnah is trying to teach me? So I want to unfold what I think are the 3 messages of the Mishnah. The first is a very simple pshat in the Mishnah, which will give us a very, very healthy and good understanding of the Mishnah. What the Mishnah is telling us on a very simple level is that if you look at the Mishnah carefully, 5 things have to do with physical existence, 5 things have to do with spiritual existence, and what the Mishnah is telling me that a riboy, an overindulgence in the physical world, is only going to cause a person destruction, and an overindulgence in the spiritual world, pouring your energies into your spiritual existence, is only going to yield something positive. And that's what each of the pieces of the Mishnah is telling me. Marbe basa, the more a person is into physical existence. Basa doesn't mean weight. Basa doesn't mean the heftier you are, so then the better lunch you're going to be for the worms in the grave. That's not the message of the Mishnah. The message is that if you're a marbe basa, that means you're a person who is completely taken up by their physical existence. All that you do about your body, you worry about your body, you worry about your physical self, about your guf. In the end, it's going to yield you nothing, because in the end, kilo b'moso yikacha kol, because in your death you're taking nothing with you, and all that you have in the grave is that your physical body is going back to the earth, which means that it's going to be a rima v'teileah. In the end, it is going to be worm fodder. And that all you schwitzed for and all you worried about when you were so focused on your physical existence, not on your health, but on your physical perfection, on honing and toning that body, on worrying about that physical world and that physical life, all that's going to yield is emptiness and nothingness. If you're marbe, not if you worry about it, not if you have it on a base level, but if you're marbe, you pour extra energy into it, that's where the problem comes. Marbe nechasim is your material world, your stuff, your toys, your money. Marbe shvachos, if you're involved with shvachos, which is, skipped one, marbe noshim, a person is looking for affection. So marbe kshafim, in the end, all it's going to bring them is kshafim. So there are a few different understandings of what that means. Why is it called sorcery? So one is that women in Jewish thought are more connected to kishuf for certain reasons, and therefore the more women you have in your house, so then the more you're susceptible to kishuf. I don't think that that's what the Mishnah is saying. I think the Mishnah is telling us something, a very deep message, and I think that the Mishnah is saying one of a few possibilities. One is that kishuf was a reality in those days, right? Sorcery and doing things magically was a real reality. The Torah considers it a reality, and that's the reason why the Torah legislates against it numerous times, because the Torah sees it as something that's real. We're worried that a person is going to go to we're talking about looking for affection, and we're worried that a person who's looking for affection will go to the ends of the world to find that affection. A person will do anything to be able to feel that affection, to be able to feel the care of another person. Even something as ridiculous as kishuf, even something as ridiculous as relying on other kinds of mediums, relying on things that a person knows are destructive, prohibited, things that are out of the realm of rationality. But when a person is looking for that kind of comfort, a person will go anywhere to find it. And I think that that's the message of the Mishnah. There is another beautiful thing that the rabbis explain, that the more physical a person is, the more a person is into sexuality and into physical pleasure. So then the more flawed a person becomes. And when a person is flawed, then a person is susceptible to kishuf, is susceptible to powers, susceptible to things in the world, to energies in the world that can drag a person down. Because again, what's happening is that a person is looking in the wrong place for their happiness. Okay, then the Mishnah continues. Mar b'shvachis, you bring in a lot of maidservants into the house. So for a variety of reasons, one of them being that there's more free time in the house. The other is that there are more people in the house. The other is shvachas, is ladies. You bring women into the house, you create a certain kind of atmosphere in the home, so then all that does is create a basis for immorality. If anybody has any question that this is a little extreme in the Mishnah, it's the reality of the world we live in. When you walk outside of our little confines of the world, what's going on in the world is the zima that exists in the world because of the openness that exists, the open lines that exist between men and women on a level which we spoke about in the first chapter, in the very beginning of the first chapter. So that you bring that kind of atmosphere into the house, it's marba zima. You bring into the house marba avadim, you outsource. You bring avadim, you get people to do your work, marba gazel. You live in a certain lifestyle. You want to maintain that lifestyle, you're going to end up doing things again that are not normal, not legal, things that are not usual or regular for you. I think that if you look at the Mishnah carefully, it's not just 5 things. It's really going through the stage of a person, that it's going through their basar, their flesh, their guf, the body, then their nechasim, then their material possessions, then their relationships, and then their status in the world, shvachos and avadim, the way they look, the way they're seen by other people. And then if you look at the next 5, the next 5 are countering that. Marba Torah, marba chaim. Why is that true? The more Torah you have, the more life you have. Why is that an analog? Why is that connected to each other? Because the more Torah you have, the more you understand the way the world works. The more you understand what priorities are. When you understand what priorities are, so then you live a different kind of life. The life is much, much more pleasant, much happier, much more comfortable, much more beautiful, if you understand what the purpose is. If you understand Torah, it's not just understanding how to hold your Kiddush cup and what chametz not to eat on Pesach. When you understand Torah, what you're understanding is you're understanding value. You're understanding purpose. You're understanding the essence of life. And the more of life you understand, so then the more chayim, then the more beautiful your life is going to be. Marba yeshiva. The more you sit and study and involve, but it's not just sitting alone. It's yeshiva and pilbul chaverim, sitting with other people. Marba chachma makes you smarter. Because the more you talk to other people, the more you share ideas with other people, the more you communicate with other people, the wiser you become. I've learned a lot, says David Melech, from my teachers. I learned a tremendous amount from my colleagues, but I learned the most from my students. Because sharing with people, listening to people's questions, listening to people's ideas, that's what makes us the wisest. Ezu chacham, who's a wise person? Somebody who learns from every single person. Marbe etza. The more etza, the more advice you have to give and you take. So marbe tvuna, the deeper is your understanding. Tvuna, bina, is understanding. Bina is the ability to be able to take two ideas and to be able to understand the third idea from the two. Bina, understanding, the same as the word bone, to build. How do you build something? You take two things, you put them together, and that creates a third thing. That's what bina is. It's maven davar mitach davar, understanding things from things. In other words, you tell me a situation, I compare it to another situation, and from there I learn what to do in a situation that has not yet come up. That's bina. The more you have to listen to a person's problems, the more you have to listen to a person where they're coming from, and you have to analyze where they're coming from, so then the more understanding, the more tevuna you're going to have. Marbet tzedakah, the more charity that you're involved in, the more that you recognize that your money is not yours and that whatever you have belongs to somebody else, belongs to God. So then the more shalom, the more internal peace you're going to have. What is our world's biggest anxiety? Money. It's one of the biggest anxieties in life. It's one of the biggest anxieties in a family between a couple is oivei, money, money, money. But if you understand, you know what? Whatever we have is a gift to us from God. Whatever we've been given is from God. We're God's custodians. Now, I don't feel bad. I don't feel bad giving it away. I don't feel bad sharing it with other people. I don't feel bad if I don't have a ton of it. Because at the end of the day, I know that it's ultimately coming from God. Marbet tzedakah. When the more I'm able to give it away means the more I understand its value. And the more I understand its value, the more shalom, the more peace that gives me. And then the Mishnah tells me that, by the way, you need to know that there's only one thing in this world that you own. And that's your name. Your name, your good name in this world was not given to you by other people. Your good name in this world was not given to you by God. Your good name in this world was not given to you by your parents. Your good name in this world was something that you acquired for yourself. Through your own integrity, through your own honesty, through your own midos, through your own personality, you acquired your good name. And when you get buried in the ground, the only thing that you have, that you take with you, and that you leave in this world is your good name. Because the truth is, you can dedicate buildings. You can have your name on buildings and things, but those things ultimately wear out and disappear. But your name stays forever. Zichroinoi livracha. May his memory forever be a blessing. May his good name last forever. When you talk about people of the past, you can talk about stuff, you can talk about what they did. You know, I've had the opportunity to unfortunately hear an enormous amount of eulogies. I've been to a fair share of funerals. And you listen to eulogies, and unfortunately, a lot of times, when close family members are trying to describe someone, they're hunting for words. They're hunting for words to say about the relationship that they've had with the niftar or with the nifteres. And most often what they're describing is stuff. Things they did, things they liked, but not their good name. Not the real essence of who they were. The shem tov. Konolo divrei Torah. If a person has acquired divrei Torah, konolo chai olam haba. What's the difference between marbe chachma and konolo divrei Torah? Marbe Torah, marbe chachma, is that marbe chaim, is that when you increase your connection to Torah, your life is going to be better. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the Torah is yours. But when you acquire Torah, when you make what's called a kinyan HaTorah, the Torah becomes literally your Torah, it becomes a part and a parcel of your existence, not just of your understanding. That's how you have been kona olam haba in this world. Your life changes. When you have a kinyan Torah, you have your portion of Torah. We spoke about yesterday that Shavuos is to get your portion of the Torah, is to make your claim on the Torah. Anochi Hashem Elokecha, says God. I am the Lord, your God. You have a portion of Torah. And when you grab that portion, it belongs to every one of us. When we grab that portion, then our Olam Hazeh becomes Olam Haba. That's my first way of understanding the Mishnah. But then I think we can look at the Mishnah and we can understand that the Mishnah is presenting me a problem and presenting me an antidote. It was no accident that these were the examples that were chosen, that if you're marbe on this side, it's great, and if you're marbe on this side, it's detrimental. Because it wasn't just 5 things to represent physical existence and 5 things to represent spiritual existence, but it's a problem and it's antidote. The Mishnah starts off marbe basar, base, physical desires. What's the antidote? The antidote is that you have to understand what the purpose and the value of life is. Torah Hashem Temima, the Torah of God is perfect. Meshivas nafesh, it gives us back life. It restores our life and it lengthens our days. When we're into basar, then we're into rima. Rima's it's like chaos. It's like we're being eaten on the inside. You want to have a life that's worth a living. You want to have a life that is really called a life. So then the antidote to being into the physical existence is looking at the world through the eyes of spirituality. The next stage, the Mishnah says, Mar b'nechasim, you're into toys, you're into money. All that's going to bring you is emptiness. But when you're into yeshiva, when you're into sitting and you're into thinking and you're into learning, so then that's going to bring you tranquility. That's going to bring you menucha. That's going to bring you peace. You're into nashim, the third stage. You're into women. You're into affection. You're into physical pleasure. What's the antidote? Eitzah, tavuna. Rethink life. Think about what's real affection. What is real attention that you desire? You know what can fill your real attention? Be a helper to other people. Be there to listen to other people. Be there to develop real relationships that are based on things deep, not just on physical desires. And that's the antidote to mar ben nashim, mar b'kshafim. Then comes the next problem. Mar b'shvachos. You're into prestige. You're into your own kavod. What's the antidote to that? Don't worry about what you make. Worry about what you give. Mar b'tzedakah. The more you give, that's real kavod. You know, they tell us, I've heard it in the name of a few very wealthy people of the past, but they say that they were asked what their value is, and they took out their tzedakah book, and they counted up all the money they gave to tzedakah, and they said, that's my net worth. Says, how's that your net worth? Go to your bank. Look at what's in the bank account. Look at what the stocks you have. Look at all that stuff. That's your net worth. He says, no, that can be taken away from me in 1 second. There's one thing that you can't take away from me. The tzedakah that I've given and the help that I've given to other people. That's my real value. That's my real net worth. You want kavod? We don't get kavod by the amount of stuff we have. Real kavod comes from the amount of stuff we give. Then a person wants to maintain a certain standard of living. Marba avodim, says the Mishnah. You want a standard of living? You want that people should look at you and say, whoa, look at that person, areicha mensch, what a rich person. Look at the way he lives. Look at the amount of house help he has. Look at the stuff he's got going on. That's empty kavod, says the Mishnah. What's the antidote to empty kavod? Put your energy into developing a shem tov, into developing a good name, not into developing a name where people look at you and say, they look at your chitzonius and they say, did you see the car that guy drives? Pshee! Don't look at it from the outside, but develop a shem tov which is the essence of your inside. And I think that the Mishna is presenting to us a problem and its antidote. There is a third explanation, which takes it even deeper. The number 10 is not arbitrary. The number 10 is that there were 5 things in this Mishnah that represent the physical world. And there are 5 things in this Mishnah that represent the spiritual world. The Gemara in Sukkah says that there are 10 amos. There are 10 cubits between the physical world and the spiritual world. Man can't get into the realm above 10 amos, and God doesn't come into the realm below 10 amos. There is a separation between the physical world and the spiritual world. And our job is to climb above those physical things and to enter into that spiritual world. And these are the 10 things that we have to climb through. 5 of them physical, 5 of them spiritual. And that we have to develop those things. The truth is, if you look at a human being, there are 10 things in a human being, 10 parts of a human being that each one of these things is speaking to. There are the 2 eyes, the 2 ears, and the tongue, which are the spiritual parts, the spiritual connections. You don't have to touch anything in order to be able to benefit from those. And then there is a physical side, the 2 hands, the 2 feet, and the reproductive organs. And those are the 10 things that a person has to develop, that a person has to climb above in order to be able to enter in to that world to come, to be able to enter in this world, to that life that is filled with something. Physical things we know. We look at the 10 Commandments. We find the same thing in the 10 Commandments. There are 5 things that focus on the physical world. There are 5 things that focus on the spiritual world, because that is the human beings made up of these 10 pieces. The physical things are limited and they deteriorate. Excess in them is just accelerating deterioration. Spiritual things have no bounds. They're nitzchi, they're everlasting. The more you indulge in them, the more you cause your elevation. And what the Mishnah is telling me is that we have to go from the most physical, marbe basar, person who's just worried about their mamish, their guf, just their body, to the most spiritual, of kana shem tov, of kana divrei Torah, of looking at the essence and elevating the essence of a person. And we have to follow these stages to go through, to climb over and to develop the things that we need to remove. We need to make sure we don't indulge in them. The things that we need to develop in ourselves, those are the things that we need to pour our energy into. We need to be marb in them. And what the Mishna is saying is that we have to prioritize. We have to recognize that living in this physical world, indulging in this physical world, only brings us in the end much strife, much emptiness. But indulging in the spiritual world, pouring our energy into the spiritual world, ultimately acquires not olam haba in olam haba, but that our olam hazeh, our this world, our existence here, is already the beginnings of our existence in olam haba. Okay, once again, I feel like I had to rush through the end to make sure that I stayed within my time limit. But I think I gave you a little flavor of what this Mishnah is saying. And I think that the Mishnah is a really just a beautiful Mishnah. The simple understanding, again, just a quick review, the simple understanding is that it's telling us excess in the physical world is no good, excess in the spiritual world is good. But then it's telling us that there is a problem and its antidote. And then it's telling us that there are actually 10 stages that a person has to go through, 10 places, 10 ways that a person has to climb.